The Articles of Confederation, although ultimately ineffective in creating a competent federal government for the United States, was able to hold the nation together during its early years. Written by a committee in the Continental Congress led by John Dickinson, the Articles created the first federal government for the United States during the War of Independence. On December 16, 1777, Virginia became the first state to ratify the Articles, although it would take until March 1st, 1781 for it to be ratified by every state. The War of Independence was towards its end by that time, as the Siege of Yorktown, the monumental battle that prompted the Treaty of Paris, would begin only 7 months later on September 28, 1781. Only one day before this event, founding father George Mason, knowledge of George Mason's extensive political career prior to and after the writing of the letter is necessary to understand his motivations. Mason started his political career as a judge for the Fairfax County Court and also became a trustee for Alexandria in 1759. He was also a member of the Ohio Company, a land speculation and settlement company for the Northwest Territory. He also became its treasurer in 1752. He was elected to the House of Burgesses in 1759 and served until 1761. Mason was an early and influential supporter of the War of Independence. He wrote an open letter in June 1766 in opposition of the Stamp Act, in which he stated the colonists would remain loyal to Britain, but not at the cost of their liberty. He was also the primary writer of the Fairfax Resolves, a set of resolves adopted by Fairfax County on July 18, 1774, in opposition to the Intolerable Acts. Mason attended the Virginia Conventions of 1776, which were a series of political meetings which future presidents Thomas Jefferson and George Washington also attended. Mason wrote what is perhaps his most influential work during the Fifth Virginia Convention, which is the Virginia Declaration of Rights. This document influenced the Declaration of Independence and also serves as the base of the Bill of Rights. For example, Section 12 of the Virginia Declaration of Rights speaks of the importance of the freedom of speech, stating that the freedom of the press is one of the great bulwarks of liberty and can never be restrained but by despotic governments. The First Amendment similarly protects the freedom of the press and the freedom of speech in general, saying Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. George Mason was still an important figure in the United States after the War of Independence. He was one of 7 Virginia delegates and 55 total to attend the Constitutional Convention. Mason was an anti-federalist and argued against a strong federal government. To protect against corruption, he proposed a 3-person executive branch, with 1 person coming from each region of the United States. He also thought the Constitution needed a Bill of Rights. Mason refused to sign the Constitution, one of 16 delegates to do so. During Virginia's state convention for ratification, he urged Virginians not to ratify the document. Although the anti-federalist faction was not yet created at the time, his anti-federalist views presented themselves in his letter to Jefferson. Mason began his letter, written to Thomas Jefferson on September 27, 1781, by bringing up Congress's plan to settle the western territory of the United States. Writing, "You have no doubt been informed of the factious, illegal, and dangerous schemes now in contemplation in Congress for dismembering the Commonwealth of Virginia and erecting a new state or states to the westward of the Alleghany Mountains." The western land he mentioned was the Northwest Territory, which his company, the Ohio Company, was invested in settling. He let his negative opinion of the plan be known almost immediately, as he described it as factious, dangerous, and illegal. He believed the sovereignty of Virginia and his position as a state was being threatened, as he said the plan was for the dismembering of the Commonwealth of Virginia. His belief that the government could dismember Virginia shows his fear of the federal government's power. Mason later wrote of the doctrine now industriously propagated that the late Revolution has transferred the sovereignty formerly possessed by Great Britain to the United States, that is, to the American Congress. Mason's negation of Congress's ownership of the U.S.'s sovereignty shows his belief in a weaker federal government, and that the states hold most power in the United States. This belief presented itself in the Virginia Declaration of Rights, and were later shown during the Constitutional Convention. Mason then went on to say that if these discussions were not stopped, the War of Independence would have only succeeded in switching the tyrant who rules the United States from King George III to the Continental Congress. As such, Mason thought the war would have been for naught if Congress is just as powerful as the British monarchy. Mason supported his stance by quoting the Articles of Confederation, which were ratified 7 months prior to the writing of his letter. He wrote, "This that Congress who drew the Articles of Union were sensible of and have provided against it by expressly declaring in Article the Second that each state retains its sovereignty, freedom, and independence in every power, jurisdiction, and right, which is not by this Confederation expressly delegated to the United States and Congress assembled. And in Article the 13th, that the Articles of this Confederation shall be inviolably observed by every state, and the Union shall be perpetual, nor shall any alteration at any time hereafter be made in any of them, unless such alteration be agreed to in a Congress of the United States, and be afterwards confirmed by the legislatures of every state. And the 9th article, defining the powers of Congress, least the power of deciding disputes concerning territory between any of the states should be attended with dangerous consequences. It is provided that no state shall be deprived of territory for the benefit of the United States, and the 11th article declares that Canada, acceding to this confederation and joining in the measures of the United States, shall be admitted to and entitled to all the advantages of this union, but no other colony shall be admitted into the same unless such admission be agreed to by 9 states. This article holds out an immediate offer to Canada, and the words no other colony plainly related to the other British colonies of Nova Scotia and East and West Floridas, and clearly excluded the idea of any absolute power in Congress to erect new states." The first article he quoted is Article 2, which gave the states all powers not delegated to the federal government. By quoting this article, Mason meant to say that as Congress is not given the power to create new states from pre-existing ones, that power falls to the state itself. As such, Congress's attempts to create new states from Virginia's Western Territory goes against the Articles of Confederation. He then quoted Article 13, which stated that the Articles of Confederation must be followed by every state, and alterations to the document must be agreed upon by every state. Mason showed that since there had been no alterations in the Article of Confederation to give Congress the power necessary to create new states out of Virginia Territory, Congress should not be able to do so. The third article Mason quoted to support his argument is Article 9, which stated no state will have to give up its land for the United States. By presenting this article, Mason indicated Congress could not create a new state since they could not take away a state's land. The last article he quoted is Article 11, which said all new states must be approved by 9 out of the 13 states except for Canada. Mason brought this article up to show Congress could not create a new state regardless without allowing the states to vote. These articles, which Congress had to follow, proved Congress did not have the authority to take Virginia's land to create new states. After quoting 4 of the Articles of Confederation, Mason said, "I should not have troubled you with these quotations," referring to how Jefferson already knew the Articles of Confederation since he was a member of the Continental Congress. However, Mason quoted these articles regardless of Jefferson's knowledge to show that Congress was assuming more power than it was explicitly given. Mason's dislike of implicit powers is shown in this letter, as he believed that Congress assuming more powers than it was explicitly given is in its nature subversive of American liberty. Furthermore, Mason believed that if Congress was given the leeway in this case, it would try to stretch its powers in the future. Mason essentially predicted the elastic clause in Article 1 of the Constitution, which allows Congress to create laws necessary to utilize its powers. This is a part of the Constitution the anti-federalist Mason believes strengthened the federal government too much. Mason concluded his letter by stating his wish for the Virginia General Assembly to discuss the matter and to instruct the Virginia delegates in Congress to stop the Congress from taking the state's land. Mason also made it a point to secure the loyalty and approval of the Western farmers by giving them the protection of the government. He knew how ready the frontier farmers could be from events like the Paxton Boys Uprising in 1763, where farmers from Paxton, Pennsylvania marched and killed 20 Native Americans in Lancaster and marched to Philadelphia. The need to please Western farmers would further be proven in 1785, when farmers in North Carolina tried to form their own state called Franklin. Mason then finished by saying he knew Jefferson could create a plan to ameliorate the issue because of his experience, and apologized for his manner of writing as he was dealing with an illness.